Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tiger Tank 12, however you want to call me, I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks. Today I have a very special vehicle for you guys, or at least in my opinion a very special vehicle. It is the SU-100U, or Y, as it is written right here. Now this vehicle actually is an historical accurate tank. I don't think a lot of people would have imagined that this was actually a vehicle that they built. It was based on the T-100 heavy tank hull, which you might know or not know. It's not in the game, but it was one of those experiments of the Soviet army where they put two turrets on one tank. There was a turret at the front and there was a turret in the back. It was designed to be a heavy tank that was able to breach the line in the Finnish-Soviet War, which started in 1939 because of disputes on the borders. What ended up happening was during 1939, the Soviets in the Winter War, because they started, I think, the 20th of November, and the war ended on the 30th of March, 2019, no, 1940. What they needed was a heavy vehicle that was able to breach through the bunkers that the Finns did build along the, along the border. What ended up happening was that the Soviets did lose a very large amount of manpower and vehicles to the Finns at the beginning of the war, and they decided to actually build the SU-100Y because the 75 and 45 millimeter guns that the Soviet tanks had available weren't able to breach those bunkers during that time. So the period of the SU-100Y started, or U. First, it was supposed to be retrofitted with a 150 millimeter howitzer gun from a naval battleship, but they decided to go against it because the KV-1 and the KV-2 with the 152 millimeter howitzers were just superior in most of the facts. So they decided to go for the SU-100Y with a 130 millimeter naval gun. And this is very, very interesting because they put a naval gun onto it, and the only real focus on this vehicle was it was supposed to be able to breach the Finnish defensive lines. It was supposed to destroy bunkers. But since they actually managed to push through in March 1940 and they basically won the war, the Soviets, and forced the Finnish to Moscow for peace talks, they weren't able to actually test this vehicle in battle. It was supposed to be tested in combat to see if it was actually a viable option and if they would produce it in, in series. But they didn't do that, and now you have one last vehicle, the one prototype that was actually built, I think still in Kubinka in the Tank Museum, and you can still look at it today. It's very unique, and I think it's very, very interesting because it was designed for one purpose only: to breach those defensive lines. And we're going to be taking a closer look at the statistics, the characteristics in just a second, and afterwards gameplay, so we can just see if this tank is worth it. I think you can still buy it in the Soviet tech tree. Let me just see real fast. Yeah, it's still in the Soviet tech tree. I'm not sure how much it's going to cost you, but it's a real cool tank. So yeah, you can see right here, T-100 heavy tank. It was intended to neutralize fortified emplacements and enemy vehicles, and wasn't equipped with the B-13S2 naval gun. Pretty damn cool. Never entered mass production because, well, the Finnish and Soviet Winter War came to a halt, came to an end, and they didn't need a fortified or a vehicle that was able to breach fortified positions. So if you think about back to the Finnish-Soviet Winter War, you do know that the Soviets did lose quite a large amount of men at the very beginning during the winter offensive, where the Finns were just more mobile with their ski units, and they just knew the environment better. The Soviets had pretty bad NCOs, very, very bad officers, because obviously because of the purge previously during the 1930s, where they lost a lot of their higher commanding officers, and so they had new officers and you were able to see that during that war, it showed all the weaknesses that the new Soviet army, the Red Army, how it was then after all the purges and all the changes in personnel, what kind of issues it had. And later down the road, when the Germans, the Third Reich, decided to start Operation Barbarossa, the Finns actually did decide to go to war with the Soviets once more to regain the lost territory, because they lost quite a bit of territory. Still today, a lot of the territory that used to be Finnish now belongs to the Russians, and now the Finns and Russians kind of live, on both sides. It's very interesting, and you can see how much geopolitical everything has changed over the last couple of years, especially what happened after World War II, all the changes, and after World War One as well. But I don't want to annoy you more with facts about war and changes that have come out of war. So moving on, it is the 130 millimeter gun. This is a naval gun that you have on a tier 6 vehicle. Now keep in mind, at tier 6 you're going to be facing vehicles such as the AC-4 Experimental. And if you look at this vehicle, and if you look at its HP, just give me a second. This is actually, I think, the very first Australian built tank, the AC-4, if I'm not mistaken. No, that's the wrong button. Because it was really famous, was placed prototype. Yeah, it was actually the Australian built tank. And what was very interesting about this vehicle was this little nub. This is the machine gun port. It looks like a little penis, but that's not not that important. But still, now if you look at this vehicle, it has 750 HP, it has 65 millimeters of frontal armor, and if you look at the SC100, you have a 130 millimeter gun, which does on average about 440 HP worth of damage. Now, if you use the premium AP shells, which have less penetration on this vehicle but more damage, I think, what is the average damage? It's probably like 500 something. You could, if you're very lucky, okay, you cannot one-shot a AC-4 Experimental, but you could one-shot several tier 6 light tanks, if you put it like that, if you use the premium shell, or if you use high explosive, which is also an option on this tank. And that's really interesting. This vehicle has the largest gun, at least largest caliber for tier in every tier, right? 130 millimeters, nothing at tier 6 comes close to 130 millimeters, except for a howitzer gun on the KV2, but I don't really call it, an anti-tank gun, because this is a naval gun. It still is not really supposed to be destroying tanks, but still, it has AP shells, and the 152 millimeter howitzer gun of the KV2 is not intended to be firing high AP shells at other targets, because the pen is just too bad. Now, that is something that you'll notice on this vehicle as well. You have 196 millimeters of penetration. Against most tier 6 vehicles, that is not an issue. Against most tier 7 vehicles, that is not an issue. But if you're facing some tier 8s and tier 7 tanks that have a bit of armor, you might run into a couple of problems, because your AP shells that are premium don't have more penetration, they just have more damage, and then you're looking kind of down the drain. But that is something we'll see in the game afterwards. Let's continue. So the average, or the rate of fire on this vehicle is not great. You're firing a naval gun. That takes time to reload. It's a huge gun. Imagine the gun breech in the back here. Imagine the exhaust, the fumes when you're firing this gun. I have no idea how this vehicle was supposed to be combat effective when, you have such a huge gun in there, almost no space. Actually, you have a little bit of space in the back, but the rounds are as large as children, probably. 130 millimeter caliber shell, that is a large shell. I mean, everyone who has seen a tank and seen the shells will know how large a shell can be, starting from even 100 millimeters. So the reload time obviously isn't going to be that great. 14 seconds is almost pretty killer for a tier 6 tank destroyer. There are going to be tanks out there that have a reload time of less than 2 seconds, no, less than 3 seconds. The E25 at tier 7, and they will tear you apart if they see you. So keep in mind, being seen is not what you want to be, or at least you want to have protection when you're being seen and still be able to dish out some damage, you know, when you can. This is a vehicle that you want to play very, very cautiously. You want to do the damage, sit in the back, and then maybe switch position and do some more damage and not get lit right away. Why is that? We're going to move to that fact just in a second. So the gun traverse speed is also not too amazing, 27.12 degrees per second. The gun depression is horrible with 5 degrees and 15 degrees elevation. This is typical Soviet stuff. You're not supposed to shoot below you. You're supposed to shoot straight in front of you. And yeah, if there's a tank below you, this is not a Ridgeline Warrior. Gun traverse limits 10 degrees to the right, 10 degrees to the left. You'll be turning your tank quite often to be able to shoot at other vehicles. The aim time, on the other hand, 2.53 seconds for 130 millimeter is not too bad. The dispersion at 100 meters with 0.36 is actually okay, but do not expect to hit all of those shots pinpoint accurate. This is actually one of those tanks where you hope you actually manage to hit them, and then you hope that you actually manage to hit the weak spot if it is a tier 8 or a tier 7. But 196 millimeters, don't get me wrong, is enough to do some serious damage to even tier 8 tanks if you have the weak spots or the lower plate to your availability, or if they have no armor. And they will know that it hurts because it's 130 millimeters. That's 440 HP that a tier 6 tank does on a regular basis. Now, to the worst part of this tank. It has 700 hit points. 700 hit points for a tier 6 tank destroyer is actually not too bad. It's a bit above average, I think. And you need those 700 hit points. You need every single one hit point. You cannot lose additional hit points when you're out in an engagement, because as soon as you get lit, this tank is large. It's huge. You have a large profile. You have almost no armor with 60 millimeters at the front, at the side, and at the rear. And everything at tier 6, tier 5, tier 7 is going to be able to penetrate you unless they shoot your lower or upper plate right here, because it's angled quite nicely. Sometimes people will shoot the lower plate instead of the, you know, the large box on top of it. I don't know why, but sometimes you get lucky, you bounce some shots, or even they shoot your gun mantlet and they bounce off of that. But don't take that for granted. This is not a vehicle that is supposed to be bouncing shots. It's supposed to be shooting, staying in cover, staying hidden, and then shooting some more and not getting hit at the same time. Now that opts the question, why was this supposed to be a bunker breacher? How are you supposed to be running through fortified positions with only 60 millimeters of armor? This protection is not enough, but it probably had to reduce the armor for the gun to be able to have enough space in this vehicle, not make it too heavy, not to have to put in the, you know, strongest engine, which we'll talk just in a second about, and to still be able to, you know, be combat effective. But it's really interesting to see that they decided to go with this very bad armor to use it as a bunker breacher. We have on the other side the Americans, the T95, which was supposed to go through the Siegfried line, but never was used. That had so much armor, and this vehicle had no armor. So yeah, go figure. Mobility, on the other hand, you have a real strong engine. It's a tier 8 engine, 890 horsepower, 67 tons weight limit. This vehicle weighs a lot. For a tier 6 vehicle, it weighs very, very much. If we once again compare the what is it called right here? Is it even there? Can't even see it. The AC4 experimental, it weighs 31 tons. It weighs half of this vehicle, but it's also a lot smaller, right? So 35 kilometers per hour going forwards. Top speed is actually not too bad. I was first imagining it was going to be a lot worse, but the armor is really not holding up. So the 35 kilometers per hour is okay feature. It would have been nice to have maybe 40 kilometers per hour, but that would have made it too fast. The traverse speed with 33 degrees per second is also not as amazing. This tank is not supposed to be in close quarter engagements. It's supposed to be at mid to long ranges. So you have to utilize concealment. But this vehicle is very large, so concealment is also another factor that is not very good. You can see that the concealment on this vehicle, also my crew isn't trained as exceptionally well in concealment as other crews are, but you can see that the concealment factor is pretty bad. 397 points with camo net on, and with, you know, the crew being trained, at least some of them, in concealment. This vehicle is going to be quite difficult to, you know, keep being hidden because of its large size, but you have to work around it because the main star of this tank is once again the gun. And this is something we'll just see in the game. Now, the spotting obviously is not going to be as amazing either, only 350 meters of view range. I could have put a binocular in it, or binoculars into it, and taken out maybe the gun rammer and you know, have all that stuff, but I decided against it because I much rather prefer having a bit more of a better rate of fire instead of, you know, maybe 420 meters view range, because this vehicle already has pretty bad base view range. With binoculars, it would get extended by quite a bit. We can actually try it out real fast. But the main priority for this tank, at least right here, the C438, for me is to stay hidden, to be able to shoot at the targets, you know, fast enough to maybe deal 2 shots of damage instead of 1. But it would still be nice if I would get more spotting and concealment on it. But I have to train my crew to increase those numbers. So without further ado, I'd say let's jump into a game and see how well this tank does perform in battle. That I had today was on the map Steppes, and you can see we're playing against some tier 7s and mostly tier 6 vehicles. And what I like to do on this map is I like to go to that position over there. If you look at it on the map, it's the F0 position, where you can actually utilize all the trees as cover, knock them over, and have a very nice cocoon of foliage that will protect your tank from getting spotted. Now, keep in mind, this tank is not the fastest, it's not the smallest, it's not the best camouflaged, but it has a 130mm naval gun. Now, if you look at it, we have by far the largest caliber next to KB3, but that is a tier 7, and we're at tier 6. Now, keep in mind, with 60mm of armor all around, this vehicle is going to be a main target of artillery. Added with the fact, or coupled with the fact, that you don't have a lot of HP or you're very large, it makes it the perfect artillery target, and they have 2 artillery pieces on their side. Keep that in mind. That is why staying in cover, being hidden, is so important with this vehicle. I've seen a lot of people play this tank very aggressively, you know, thinking that I have the alpha, I'm going to be able to do some damage just by, you know, being there, the first tank that actually shoots at them, and they will not engage me. That is the wrong kind of way of playing this tank, because the rate of fire just doesn't hold up. You're going to get into a position where you might fire off 1 shot, maybe you're going to bounce, maybe you're going to hit, maybe you're going to do no damage, and what will end up happening is you're going to be taken out very quickly because you have 14 seconds of reload, while most of the other vehicles have half of that or even less of that to deal with. So you're going to be reloading quite a while they're going to be eating away at your HP, which is already very low at 700 hit points. Very important. Now, I want you guys to look at the minimap real fast. You can see that we have quite a bit of oversaturation of tanks on the right side, and we have quite a few vehicles on the left side. 2 heavy tanks, 1 tank destroyer, and a couple in the middle. This is very important because this tank is supposed to be a sniping vehicle, or at least sit on the second front line, not on the first, because of the lack of armor and the very low rate of fire. And this is exactly what you want to do with this tank. Now, 0.36 meters dispersion at 100 meters is not going to be that amazing. You saw right there, we weren't able to hit the KV2. He's hidden behind that little rock, and it's quite far away, but our shells aren't too far off, right? If I would have fired another time, it probably would have hit the KV2, but that's not too important. This is a situation which you don't want to have in this tank. You can see that my team is moving up, so we're not really very competitive at the moment, and all we can do is either we move up with them and we get exposed, or we sit in the back and defend the base. That's what I like to do much more in this vehicle. And this is also where the limitations of the gun come into play. The AT-15 on the enemy team is a tank destroyer that has very, very strong armor on the side, on the front, and on the rear. And what you were able to see right there is us not hitting or not penetrating the AT-15 on a flat side surface and then not hitting him. You can see that the accuracy of this tank does not always deliver, and that's just something that you have with a gun of a caliber such as this. If they would have made it super accurate, it would have been very overpowered. But as it is right now, as it stands in its current stand, it actually is very balanced, because it's very easy to be taken out. If it gets spotted, artillery usually is the first one to engage him, and another bounce on the side armor. And the issue that you have right here is, instead of being able to use premium ammunition, you have to still remain on AP shells, because the premium AP shells have less pen, more damage, and thus you're facing this dilemma where you cannot really do anything against the target, such as the AT-15, and you're just hoping for someone to get behind him. But the AT-15 is not the only target that is out there. If you do manage to hit a target, 366 damage, that is even 100 damage below our standard alpha, you will be able to take out some of those tier 7, tier 8 vehicles very quickly. It's very juicy, and a lot of people don't expect to get hit at tier 6 by such a large shell. Now, if you do manage to penetrate them, you just have to be very, very careful with where you want to aim. This, on the other hand, is the perfect example of where you want to be as this tank. We have a little bit of foliage, we have a little hill in front of us. We can use this foliage and hill to our advantage, and this is where we can stay behind here, reload, use our gun. We do 467 damage, and now we're going to take out the IS right with this shot. We keep them from capping the base, and you can see 2 shells in the face of the IS, 600 damage dealt very quickly. Okay, fast enough. And now we can do the same to the T-29. These are tier 7 heavy tanks, 1 tier above me, right? And I'm doing 400 HP worth of damage to them with 1 single round. And this is where you want to utilize this tank. If you have a position such as this, if you have a defensive position that you can utilize with the SU-100Y, and you're facing, I don't know, tier 7s, tier 6, even tier 8 tanks, you're going to be able to do some really, really juicy damage. Now, 1,535 damage in this game. It could have been better. It could have been better if we actually decided to move to the base or back to base earlier, because they breached through the western flank a lot faster. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind that the AT-15 would have destroyed us. He would have probably spotted us, and we wouldn't have been able to do anything against him. But the damage output that this vehicle does at 1,535 for 3 shots, or no, that was actually 4 shots that we actually hit, is pretty spectacular. But at the same time, I've noticed that either you're you die way too fast, or it takes you too long to get to a position and you bounce off certain targets, and your damage output isn't going to be as great as that. 1535 for a tier 6 is pretty decent. That was just 4 shells that we hit and managed to get through. Now if you manage to get into a position, a tier 6 battle only, and you have quite good range for hitting like most of the targets, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage with this tank. I think people forget that this is such a big brawling beast, and I really enjoy it. I really like it. It's one of those tier 6 vehicles that's very unique. It's not overpowered, but it fits right into the game, and it's an added bonus that it's actually a historical vehicle that was built but never really tested in a combat environment because it wasn't needed anymore. Because it was designed for one purpose only: breaching defensive lines with 60 millimeters of frontal armor. I don't know if it would have been a great vehicle, but still 130 millimeters, that is a very, very fierce gun. Very, very dangerous for tanks and bunkers and positions. And you can see that this is really a great tank in the right environment. So I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me, do you own the SC100? Why? Do you enjoy it? Did you expect maybe more armor on it? Or do you think it is balanced at the moment? Do you think it's overpowered? I don't know. Write it down in the comment section below. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.